Hi, my name is Jack Wallen, and I'm here to talk to you about something. Now, this little something was inspired by something that I did last Saturday. And me and two other people, two very good friends of mine, got together and we filmed another scene for me and my muse. And one of the things that I learned during that 3-hour filming session, in which we were able to produce 1 minute of footage, I learned that I have a pretty good eye for this. And that is what led me to want to talk to you today about this particular subject. I have often said that it's important for artists to try different things. And it goes beyond a horror writer trying their hand at romance, or a romance writer trying their hand at thrillers. It goes way beyond that, into the realm of, let's say, a writer taking an acting class, an actor taking a writing class, a director taking a dance class. Here's the thing, and this is really crucial for every artist to understand. No matter what medium your art is, whether you're a painter, a musician, a dancer, a sculptor, a basket weaver, an actor, a writer, it doesn't matter. Listen carefully. Good art always tells a story. You can boil the act of creating art down to that essential thing. And if the art that you're creating doesn't tell a story, then something's missing. You've probably, let's say you've seen the painting Sunday in the Park with George, or the musical that it's based on. If you look at that painting, or any other painting, if you look at it long enough, a story begins to unfold. And it doesn't matter which painting you're looking at, as long as it's from a true artist who understands the idea that all art tells a story. So what does that mean? Well, because I've been writing for so long, and because I have been an actor for so long, and I've done so many theatrical productions, hundreds of them, I have kind of learned, at least I should have learned, how to tell a story. But here's the thing. You don't just tell a story with words. You tell a story with imagery, with movement, sound, lights. There is no end to the artistry that you can use to tell a story. And as long as that art that you create represents that story, or tells that story, then you're onto something. Now, if you're a writer, you can't be a writer and not know how to tell a story, or can you? I have read quite a number of books over the years. And I have run into a few books, even fiction books, that don't tell a coherent, cohesive story. And when I run into those books, I always struggle to finish them. But at the same time, I think, okay, there's something to be learned here. And I am one, as a writer, I am one who always wants to get right to the story in my work. And the way I see it is, if I haven't grabbed the attention of the reader within the first page, then I have failed. If I haven't given the reader the hint that there is a good story that's going to unfold before them, if I haven't done that in the first page or two, I have failed. And it's the same thing. I have directed a few things before. I'm directing at least the video portion of Me and My Muse. I have another director who's going to direct the stage portion of it. But one of the most important things that I ever learned as a director was that everything has to be related in some way, shape, or form to the story that you are telling. You metaphorically paint pictures on a stage with your actors, your set, your props, your furniture. You tell a visual story. And you can oftentimes, something that's very interesting to me is that either at some point during the run of a show, before a show opens or after a show closes, you have a photo shoot. And the director will choose different moments in the show to have the photos taken. Or sometimes a photographer will take shows during a run of takes photos of the run of the show. And the really cool thing about it is you can look at those photos apart from the actual play or whatever, and you can see them telling a story. You don't have to have the dialogue. You can see the story unfold before you in photo form. And it's the same thing with directing a play or a movie or a television show. It has to tell a story. It tells a story via visual, via words, via sound. I mean, think about this. Think about the relationship of sound to the things that you watch. Sound is I use the word manipulative, not necessarily in the negative way, but it's very easy to manipulate people's emotions with sound, with music. And that's why a lot of times you'll see music used very carefully or very intentionally in a movie or a TV series or a play. And one of the things that I discovered when I was editing this 3 hours of footage that we filmed that wound up giving me 1 minute of scene, I edited it and I watched it and I realized that something was missing, and that something was music. So I found some music that worked for it, and I had to. But here's the thing: I found some royalty-free music that I have, and there were moments in the piece of music that worked perfectly for this scene, but unfortunately, the scene was too long that it overwhelmed its stay with the music. So the first 20 or 30 seconds of the song was perfect. The rest of the song was too much. So I had to, knowing what the story was I was telling with this 1 minute scene, I knew that the music had to tell that story as well. So I had to kind of clip it and manipulate it such that it worked with the scene. It didn't work in it didn't force anything. It didn't go against the story that I was trying to tell. So I mean, it's like you have this very poignant, very touching, soft kind of moment, and you've got this blaring music, and it's counter to what you're trying to do. So you have to, and as you're filming something, you have to be able to tell the story with the composition of what you're filming, and so you can't just willy-nilly film random things and hope that it comes together. You have to be kind of intentional with your filming and with the placement of the camera and the framing of the scene. Everything is so complex with film. But here's the thing. If you're a true artist and you know how to tell a story, you can do this. And that's really the thrust of what I want to say now, is that as long as you know how to tell a story with art, through art, you can tell that story through just about any kind of medium. Now, I'm not saying that you can just whip out a drawing or a painting or whatever if you don't have the skills to paint. There is heat kicked on. It's cold down here, so you're going to have to bear with the furnace. If you can tell that story, if you know the story you're telling and you know how to tell the story, you can tell it with drawing, with words, with movement, with sound, with everything. And then you could piece all that stuff together such that it complements the story you're telling. But my point is, had I not, if I didn't have the ability to tell a story in the way I can, if I were given the task of directing a short movie, a TV series, or whatever, I would fail miserably. But because I know how to tell a story, I can take up just about any form of art and tell the story with that. Now, I can't draw. I can't draw for crap, no matter how hard I try. I can draw Bill the Cat and stick figures. That's it. But if you told me to tell a story with stick figures, I could do it. Now, it wouldn't be a masterpiece, but it would tell a story. And sometimes the story is the single most important aspect of your art. And so no matter what form of art you practice, whether it's writing, music, whatever, whenever you launch into your next project, ask yourself this: what is the story that I'm trying to tell with this thing that I'm going to create now? And if you can't answer that question with 1 or 2 sentences, then you're not ready to tell that story. You're not ready to do that piece of art. Step back a little bit and ask yourself that question: what story am I trying to tell? And once you know the story that you're trying to tell, then it's time to dive right into that piece of art and do it. Because you understand what it's all about. And as long as you have a solid grasp on the story that you want to tell and the ability to tell it, you will succeed at what you're trying to do. I've written sci-fi adjacent stories. There's the cyberpunk Lament. There's the steampunk. What is it called? The Clockwork Cabaret series. And there's a little bit of sci-fi peppered into other series, but I've never written a full-blown sci-fi book. And I knew it was time for me to do that. So at the same time, I thought, well, I've never really done this before, so how do I go about writing sci-fi? I did what I always do. So what's the story? What is this story about? So I had, in my to be written file, I had roughly 3 sentences that described this story. And those 3 sentences were enough for me to go, I got this. I can tell this story. Because, I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say, if you can write one genre, you can write any genre. And I can back that up by saying, if you can tell a story, you can tell that story in any genre. I mean, think about it. Think about this. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. It's been retold countless times. Ad freaking nauseum. Romeo and Juliet has been told and retold and retold and retold. And you know the story of Romeo and Juliet. 2 star-crossed lovers from opposing houses fall in love, and their families try to keep them apart, and in the end, they think the only solution is to take their own lives. And in the end, one of them dies and one of them survives. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler for any of you who haven't read Romeo and Juliet, but I'm pretty sure that everybody knows the story of Romeo and Juliet. So you know that story really, really well because it's been in the oeuvre of art for decades, centuries. We all know it. It's just like we all know the story Christmas Carol. And since it's Christmas time, ho, ho, ho. Because I do love me some holidays. I do love Christmas time. But you know that story. And if I say Christmas Carol, you're going to get images in your head. And you're going to go, I know that story. It's about the grouchy old man who gets a lesson from some ghosts to be not so grouchy. It's like, don't be a dick, Ebenezer Scrooge. There's your lesson. You know the story. So, Romeo and Juliet is a romance. But because you know the story so well, you could probably tell that story in the horror genre, the sci-fi genre, the thriller genre. There is no end to how you could tell that story. The same thing with the Christmas Carol. There are so many adaptations of A Christmas Carol by way of movies. And each one of them is so different. There's one of them that's this close to being straight up horror. There's the comedy versions. There's the musical versions. And it works out that way because people know the story. And Charles Dickens told that beautifully, brilliantly told that story in written form. And then people adapted it to movies. And you can also find that there have been loose adaptations of A Christmas Carol in TV, in episodes of TV series, in other art forms. And the reason why that's possible is simply because we know the story. And we know it well. If you didn't know Christmas Carol as well as you do, you probably couldn't tell that story very well, which means you probably wouldn't be able to bring it to life via whatever art form. Think about it this way. Let's stick with the Christmas Carol because, again, holidays. If you closed your eyes and I said, okay, imagine Christmas Carol as a ballet. With your eyes closed, you could see it. I close my eyes and I can see that ballet unfolding right before me in the cinema of my mind's eye. I see it. And I couldn't choreograph it because I'm not a choreographer, but I could certainly direct that. I could develop the concept. I could direct it. I could hire a choreographer and the dancers and say, okay, we're going to tell this story. And this is what this story means to me. And that's important because you have your own take on an individual story. I mean, was Romeo and Juliet Romeo's story or Juliet's story? Or was it the family story? What was it? And that's what makes it interesting, because even though we all know the story, we all have our different points of view of the story. And you may think that, and I think that A Christmas Carol is Ebenezer Scrooge's story. Of course it is. That's the arc. But you may think that it's Jacob Marley's story. Jacob Marley, maybe it is Jacob Marley's story, and he was determined to come back from the dead to educate his former partner and make him get over his Scrooginess. That's a word. It is now. So, in the end, I encourage every artist to try something new. Try the written word, try theater, try film, try anything. Any form of art you can, try it. And approach it with, I'm just telling a story. I am just telling a story with this different art form. Let's get at it. Let me think about it. Maybe you're a painter, maybe not. I'm not. I can paint a set, I can't paint a painting. Close your eyes and think of A Christmas Carol. Now, paint a picture that tells the story of Christmas Carol. paint that picture. Close your eyes, focus on it, paint that picture. You can do it. You can do it because you know the story. Now, of course, writers do have a little bit of an advantage because we tell stories for a living. But at the same time, when you can be visual with your story, the impact is even greater. If you can close your... I do this rather often when I'm writing a book. I will close my eyes and I will imagine the scene that I'm about to write unfolding before me inside my head. And it plays out like a movie. And if it plays out well, I know I'm going in the right direction. If it doesn't play out, if I have trouble seeing it play out, then something's wrong. And I have to go back and figure out what is wrong with the story that isn't coming through. So if you have the opportunity, at any chance, try a different form of art. And here's a good way to do it. Let's say you're a writer. Let's say you've written a story. Now, take that story that you've written that you know so well and imagine it as a ballet. Imagine it as a painting. Imagine it in another form. Even better if you can do it. If you can close your eyes and imagine the story that you wrote as a painting, then paint that painting. Because you're going to learn something about that story that's going to bring it to life even better. Because you could see it, because you know the story so well, you could see it in your head, you could put it on canvas or paper or whatever, and you're going to be able to give it more depth and character. I firmly and fully believe that true artists can transcend their chosen media. That's why you often see actors wind up directing episodes of shows. Because they know their characters and they know the series so well that they transcend the role of acting into directing. It's why a few years ago I wrote I Profundus, which was a story about Oscar Wilde that was produced by a theater, and I directed it. I was able to direct it because I knew that story so well. I knew all of the undercurrents of the story, the subtext, all of it, the metaphors, and I could direct that. Now, if you had given me a story that I didn't know so well, I might struggle. Or I would just have to spend extra time figuring out what that story was for me. And that's what I have to share with you people, wonderful, wonderful people today. But I do have something else I want to say. I'm going to be embarking on another series, another video series, and it's not going to take the place of this. I'm going to keep doing this series because I love doing this series. But I'm going to start doing a series of videos that are more technical in nature, and I'm talking about one specific area of technology. So it might bore some of you more artistically inclined people, or you might learn something and you might be interested in trying the thing that I'm going to talk about. And I hope to start that next week, and you'll know when I do because it'll be here on this channel. And if you see it and you go, well, I don't know what that is, click play. You might learn something. You might learn something that needs to be in your life. I'm excited about this because I have been dealing with this particular piece of technology for 30 years, or almost 30 years. And so I know it really well, and I have a lot to share about it. So we'll see what happens. Just trying to broaden my horizons. Anyway, thank you so very much for willingly sit down and listen to me blather on. I don't know why you do it. I know why you do it. Because you're awesome. That's why you do it. Anyway, I hope that you and everyone you know and love Have a wonderful, wonderful day.